Welcome back to Sister Circle Live. This month we are honoring Black history with our Bridging the Gap series. This is an opportunity to bring generations together to learn what makes us beautiful Black people. Our history, culture, and lifestyles are all very important. Today we are highlighting a civil rights icon. He marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He fought for our rights as a politician. Let us bridge the gap in civil rights with Ambassador Andrew Young. We are so very excited to have with us Ambassador Andrew Young. Sisters, we are just honored. Don't you feel honored? This is fantastic. How are you today, sir?
I'm wonderful in the presence of two beautiful, intelligent, magnificent young ladies.
Well, thank you so much. Ambassador Young, let's take it all the way back to the 60s. How did you even become involved in the civil rights movement?
You know, I was born in the civil rights movement in the 30s. I was born in 1932 in the Depression, right at the end of the Depression, and I lived in a neighborhood with an Irish grocery store on one corner, a Italian bar on another, the Nazi Party was on the third corner, and a Chevrolet dealership around the fourth corner. So I was, and they had other Black folk in the neighborhood, but they didn't have any other Black children. So my life started, at 4 years old, my daddy had to explain to me about the Nazi Party and how white supremacists just didn't know any better. And he said, you know that God created of one blood all the nations of the world, but don't get upset about them and don't let them get you upset.
Wow, so this was embedded in you since you can
childhood, yeah.
So it was only right that you joined.
Well, and I didn't really, you know, there's a story I like to tell that is, it was really my baptism in the civil rights movement. I had worked with Martin Luther King and been to Albany and Birmingham, but I went to Savannah, and Hosea Williams was in jail. And there were some kids that were just marching with picket signs, and they were just about 10 years old. And they hadn't been arresting anybody in Savannah. And the police rolled up and locked these kids up and started locking them up. And I went over and I said, officer, these children don't have permission from their parents. They're not gonna know where they are. There are no adults with them, you know. You really shouldn't lock them up like that. Just send them home. Yeah. And he grabbed me and said, you go with them.
Wow, wow.
The movement, you don't choose to get in it. You just snatch me off the street, minding my business. But I was training for it all my life, and almost all of us have to do that.
Yes, yes.
Well, like you said, you were in the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King, and you both have done some wonderful things together. What was it like for you? Were you ever fearful?
You know, he would not let you be afraid. Yes. He would start preaching your funeral. So he says, somebody's gonna die. But he'd preach your funeral more like, well, back in my generation, it would be Richard Pryor. I don't know who the head clown is now.
Maybe Kevin Hart. Yeah, maybe Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart.
Yes.
But Kevin wasn't as raw
as Richard. Right.
And Dr. King wouldn't curse, but he could get pretty. He would say all the things you would never want said. Because he'd be saying, I think I can preach you into heaven.
Nice.
So he had to confess your sins to God, which he made up. And then he'd ask God to forgive you. Have mercy on him, Jesus.
Yes.
But he made us laugh.
Good.
And I think that was his way of coping with his fears and anxieties too.
Yes. So you helped draft the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voter Rights Act of 1965. When you look at your body of work, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
I don't know. I think I enjoyed being mayor of Atlanta more because everything else was a team effort. And Atlanta was too, but it was more, the burden was pointed at me. And I had this burden and the responsibility for anything that cropped up.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Because we had such a good background.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this city, when it made a decision in early 1960s to be a city too busy to hate, and the business community made that decision, not the black community. And they decided that they were not going to put the desegregation of the city onto the children, that they were going to take it on as part of the business community. And they integrated the Chamber of Commerce first. And that said something about the leadership of Atlanta.
With integration, and because they never really had to fight, do you think this generation has become too relaxed?
No, I think that life ought to be easy. And it ought to be automatic. I mean, you ought to be able to go through life on automatic pilot and take the challenges that you want to take for whatever career opportunities you want. We as a city and a state should try to make it as comfortable as possible and try to help you as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But the truth of it is, nothing in life is easy.
Yeah.
And everybody has to struggle for everything. And that's not a matter of color. Everybody has to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of struggle, Congressman John Lewis announced stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Have you had a chance to speak with him? How's he doing in the process of
I've talked to
heal?
his assistant,
Okay.
but I was pleased that the day after he announced, my wife ran into him in Dillard's department store. Okay. And he, in addition to his staff, they had a crowd following him, like 25 people following him around the store like he was the Pied Piper.
Right, right.
And everybody loves John Lewis.
Yes.
And John Lewis is really one of the saints of the movement.
Yes.
But he's sort of like Jimmy Carter. And I think little things like cancer slow down everybody, but I think he's got his eyes on the prize. And as long as there's work to be done in Washington, he's going to be back there doing it.
Yeah, awesome. Amazing for him to talk about Congressman John Lewis and pushing forward and continuing to, even through his healing process or fighting the good fight, he's still saying, hey, you know what? He's going to be fighting for us no matter, how he's feeling or whatever.
Exactly.
So I love it. But, I mean, just to have an icon like him and sit down at his
you
feet.
can still touch.
Yes.
You can still touch.
Right.
Still with us. To have marched
Yes.
with Dr. King.
Right.
It's just amazing.
It is absolutely outstanding. So we, if you're sticking around with us, we'll have more with Ambassador Andrew Young and a newcomer in civil rights, Taos Wynn. But remember, the conversation always continues at Sister Circle TV on all social media platforms. Tell us what you think about Ambassador Andrew Young.
They think he's the bomb.
Yes.
Because he is.
Yes. He's an icon. Oh, the interview. How about that?
Welcome back to Sister Circle Live. We are here with the illustrious Ambassador Andrew Young, and joining us is Taos Wynn from the Millennial Civil Rights Campaign.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. Thank you.
So let's talk about the importance of bridging the gap between the generations.
I don't know that there is much of a gap. It's a continuing, I think the civil rights in American history is almost like a roller coaster. It's always going. Mm-hmm. And you just need to hold on and keep on going.
And keep on keeping on. Mm-hmm. Well, Taos, talk to us a little bit about the campaign and how young folks are galvanizing to push our true narrative forward, not even just the narrative, but the work.
Sure. So it is about bringing us all together, right, to further human and civil rights in our generation. And young people are passionate about it, especially on college campuses and so forth. And even millennials, you talk about narrative. There's such a narrative around millennials in general. Maybe they're not as active or involved. And we're really trying to reshape that narrative completely and show that millennials are out getting the work done. But it's also very much so intergenerational. So working with with the generations that came before us, gleaning from the wisdom and institutional knowledge from those iconic leaders such as Ambassador Young, as well as ushering a path forward and working with the generation underneath us as well. So one thing we believe is that everyone matters, everyone deserves respect, and everyone can make a difference.
Yes, yes.
You know, the biggest problem I think we left this generation is school fees. I didn't graduate in debt. You know, I could make it through school, and nowadays almost everybody has to assume some debt. That puts a burden on this generation that I think is frankly unfair. My first wife got her master's degree in New York for $16 a semester.
Oh, man.
No, I mean, but she was a teacher for years, as long as she lived, and it was the society made an investment in her, and she had a lifetime to pay it back in taxes that she paid, and as well as work. And I think that's not true. I think we put an unfair burden on the millennials in that they're almost all in debt for getting educated.
Yes.
And that should not be.
Absolutely.
I would like to hear the two different perspectives and why is it so important to get and stay involved?
I think it's imperative that you get involved, that you're aware of the issues going on. One thing that we're constantly reiterating is to be well-read. Read as much as you can, learn as much as you can, know what the issues are, and then not only know the issues, but know how to address those issues as well. And so I think it's instrumental for people to be involved, especially right now with things being as polarized as they are on the national level and even on the state level. It's about bringing people together and how can we further progress in our generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know, it's so easy now. I used to have to go to the library and check out a book. Now all I have to do is download it on my phone. And I keep a book reading on my phone, and when I'm waiting, got time to kill, you got a book in your pocket all the time.
Yes.
And there's some very good books that helped me make up all the studying I did not do.
As we close out, what do you both want to see from our nation's leadership? We'll start with you, Taos.
Really bringing a sense of unity back. Like I said, I think things are so polarized, things have become so partisan, and I think a leader who is strong enough to really unite the country overall and really be a leader for all people and not just select groups or interests. And so I would love to see that on a large scale.
Yeah.
I don't think you can put it any better than that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Except that we got to be together in. There is such a thing as a divine truth that that can't be wishy-washy. The truth is the truth.
That's it.
And just because you don't like it doesn't make it untrue.
Yes, sir.
And I think that I think we've got to have some absolutes that we cling to. Because, well, I'm a preacher, and I know that whoever made heaven and earth didn't make it on certain conditions. It's absolute law and fact, and it goes around like it's supposed to go around.
Yes.
And if it gets out of kilter, everything messes up.
Well, I know one truth. You are iconic, and we are happy to have had both of you here with us today.
You know, I don't like that.
You don't like iconic?
No, because that's a statue. That's an old stone statue.
Legendary.
I ain't that. I mean, I ain't dead yet.
Well, happy early birthday to you. 88 years young. How about that?
Thank you.
Now, I know that makes you feel good.
That makes me feel. It makes me feel good being with you, young people.
Oh, thank you so
and
much.
knowing that things are in such good hands.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Yes, we are in such good hands. Of course, these conversations are needed to continue the legacy that our leaders have established for us. We'll have more discussions on Bridging the Gap with our beautiful people weekly all month long.